Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 309.
All I can do right now is put on a brave face and go out there and be their leader.
It's over. We are screwed.
Brewers are down 3-0 in the series. Boy, what a shift in tone from the Monday podcast to the Friday podcast. I gotta tell you, I knew it was going to be a difficult series. We all knew it was going to be a difficult series. The Dodgers are loaded top to bottom. They are healthy now at the right time of year. But I didn't think we were walking into the Friday podcast down 3-0, talking about the 2004 Red Sox having scored 3 runs. 3. A 1, a 2, a 3. 3 runs in 3 games. As the Brewers now have their backs against the wall. Game 4, just trying to win one. Just trying to put one on the board tonight and see what you can do from there. Obviously, not earth-shattering analysis here. The offense is broke. It is broker than broke. And a part of that is the approach, and a part of that is facing elite pitchers. It's a mess. Pitching has been good. Defense has been fine, but just have not been able to be gritty, to be the Woodpeckers, to be the team they've been all year. It's been a mess. And Game 4 is on the way tonight, and it gets no easier. We don't know what the Brewers are going to do for their pitching tonight. I'm not even going to venture a guess anymore. I have no idea what Pat Murphy is doing with the pitching at this point. You do know that Shohei Ohtani is going to be firing 100 miles per hour for the Dodgers tonight. We're going to break it all down. We'll take a quick lap through the first 2 games, and then we'll break down more Game 3 last night. And then take a look at where we're at, and is there any chance they can get it together and at least make this a series? I think Yelly's quote yesterday, he is mired in an absolute disaster slump. But I think his quote was, now we just try to get this back to Milwaukee. That would mean a win tonight and tomorrow. Let's just get one tonight. We will talk about the Packers and Cardinals. I thought some interesting commentary from Micah Parsons. We're going to air you the whole thing. It's about a minute and a half. He had a very interesting, 18-minute sit-down outside of his locker with the Green Bay media yesterday. And one of the topics of conversation that came up is holding. And the amount of times that Micah Parsons is held or hog-tied or grabbed around the neck and shoulder pad seems to never draw a flag. And he had an interesting rant about officiating, penalties, how the NFL views offense, obviously positively, and defense not so much. It's a league based on scoring and entertainment. I just thought it was a lot of interesting commentary from Micah Parsons, who wrapped up the commentary by saying, I'm probably going to get fined for this. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the matchup. We don't know if it's going to be Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. It does sound like maybe Zach Tom's going to play. Brandon McManus, maybe not so much. We'll go over Badgers, Ohio State. That'll be extremely quick. And we will talk a little bit about the Bucs and extending A.J. Green. And I'm feeling some optimism now, I think, for the regular season, which gets underway next week, Wednesday. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down. Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it. It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
All right, welcome in. Friday morning. I just want to play this real quick. We blogged about this yesterday. This is the only time I have smiled as it relates to baseball content so far this week. I think this dropped on Monday or Tuesday. We blogged about it yesterday, so we haven't talked about the Pope in a while. It's been a while since we had conclave content. And as I said in the blog, I would never wish ill on the American Pope, Pope Leo. But I miss a conclave. I miss it. Right now, I miss it. With the way the Brewer offense is going, I could use a conclave. Maybe the Brewers can have a conclave about their hitting coach and trying to figure out what to do there. But the Pope is American. Never happened before. And very soon after, the conclave and the white smoke, or as Nicolas Cage, one of the greatest actors of our generation, would say, green smoke, whatever, in The Rock. Once they hit the white smoke and Pope Leo was selected, the American Pope, people started tracking down information about him. And being from America and going to college in America, he was and is a baseball fan, which we've never been able to say about the Pope. He is a Chicago White Sox fan and apparently a Bears fan too. But we hadn't talked much about him since the conclave wrapped up and he became the Pope. So he was on one of his papal tours, I think you'd say. And somebody chirped him from the audience. Now, I don't know how easy it's going to be to hear this audio on the podcast. We're going to play it either way. But somebody just yells as he's driving by, "Go Cubs!" And he snaps his head around and hits him in Spanish with Han Perdido, which is, they lost, talking about Game 5 between the Brewers and Cubs. Go Cubs! Han Perdido! They lost! I love that we have an American Pope. I love that we have an American Pope that is following Major League Baseball, like a non-0% chance that after he's done with the washing of the feet and the Nicene Creeds and the Hail Marys and all that stuff, that he might sit down at his computer or on his phone and check the box scores from last night. I love that. And I love that somebody's yelling "Go Cubs" at him, and I love that he interacted with it. It is just the best. I said in the blog, we need to find somebody to get to one of his masses or whatever, one of his driving tours, to yell in Latin, "The Bears still suck" at him, and see if he responds to that. Man, I miss the conclave. I wish we had a conclave to talk about this morning. All right, let's hop into it. Brewers and Dodgers, NLCS. We opened the podcast on Monday, getting set for Game 1, talking about how maybe we can avenge 2018. Game 7, Brewers had a lead. They were, 7 innings away from the World Series in 2018. And maybe this was a chance to get some revenge for that. We did acknowledge that this is not going to be easy. This Dodger team is loaded. I think we talked about it on the Monday podcast, and I had a texter on the B93 Morning Show bring this up as well after we broke down Game 3. That texter said something to the effect of, actually I think I have it right here, said, "I guess that 6-0 in the regular season didn't mean anything, John." And I believe we went over that on the podcast on Monday, that to kind of set the stage for the NLCS and to give us some hope as Brewer fans, you look at this mammoth, gargantuan payroll and all of the All-Stars and MVPs and Cy Youngs and all that kind of stuff. What gives us hope that the Brewers are going to be able to take down this giant? And going into Game 1, some of that hope was they won 97 games. Some of that hope was they had the third most runs scored in Major League Baseball. And some of that hope was, hey, they went 6-0 against this team in the regular season. They swept them in Milwaukee. They came back after the All-Star break. They swept them at Dodger Stadium. We're not expecting a sweep, but I think based on that, a lot of Brewers fans, myself included, thought that they would have a good chance in this. And as it turns out, the regular season against a team like that, a team that I feel confident now, given the way the Phillies series went and how they dispatched of the Phillies and how they've dispatched of the Brewers so far. And I got to be honest, the Blue Jay Mariners series is very entertaining. I was hoping the Brewers could do what the Blue Jays have done. The Mariners went to Toronto and took games 1 and 2. Now the Blue Jays have returned the favor. They go to Seattle and won games 3 and 4. That is tied at 2. But if this Dodger team is going to play this way, and I'm not giving up hope for the Brewers yet, I go down with the ship. As you know, if you've listened to me on the morning show over the years or on this podcast, I am a go down with the ship. Give me a violin, give me a trumpet. I am going down. I'm sinking with the ship. So I've not given up hope yet. But if I were to be a rational person for 20 seconds and see the way the series is played out, and maybe the Brewers are able to win 1 game or 2 games, but ultimately it feels likely this is going to come to an end. And I look at the matchup the Dodgers would have in the World Series, and it's hard to fathom. If they're playing like this and they're healthy the way they are, it is hard to picture a world where they're not going to be the back-to-back World Series champions. But yeah, the 6-0 during the regular season didn't mean squadoosh. I guess ultimately, with the way the Dodgers have kind of played this year, and like I said, it kind of feels like now that they know what they've had, or they knew what they had all year, and they were just trying to make their way through the regular season. And even though the Padres threatened them for a little bit to win the NL West title, at no point did the Dodgers relinquish that. And the Brewers won 97 games, the Dodgers won 93 games. But it just kind of felt like the Dodgers' focus all year now that I look at it in hindsight, has been just make sure you're healthy at the right time of year. We've got the horses, we've got the experience, and when the lights are brightest, we'll be fine. And when you look at what they did to the Phillies, a star-studded Phillies lineup, disposing of them in 4 games fairly easily. When you look at what they've done now to the 97-win Brewers, it's hard to picture any team challenging them, and it feels kind of like that 6-0 in the regular season was like a preseason win. You know what I mean? It would be like if the Packers took on the Eagles again in the wild card round in the playoffs this year, or the divisional round, and as Packer fans, we said, well, they beat them in the preseason, so they should be able to beat them in the division round. That's kind of what it feels like now in retrospect, that 6-0 against the Dodgers in the regular season. Well, we beat them in August. We should be able to beat them in the middle of January. Maybe we took a little too much from that. I don't know any fan base that wouldn't. I don't think we would have been alone if it were the reverse. If it were the Phillies and Dodgers in the NLCS and the Phillies went 6-0 in the regular season, they'd be chirping the same thing. So I don't think it's unusual for a fan base to look at that. But now, hindsight being 2020, with the way this has looked, with the way the Dodgers have played in October, it feels like, yeah, that 6-0 in the regular season didn't mean a whole lot to anybody in LA. Meant a lot to us in the moment, but doesn't mean a lot to portend how this series is going to play out. So we'll really quickly go through games 1 and 2, and we'll break down game 3 a little more in depth. And then we can just talk about, is there a chance that you can get one here? Is there a chance you could be the 0-4 Red Sox? Probably not, but maybe. Why not? So game 1, turns out when you look back at these 3 games, even though you got absolutely dominated by Blake Snell in that game, by the end of it, that was really your best chance to win any game this year. Now, game 1 also featured one of the wildest double plays I think I've ever seen. We'll always have that. So just prepare yourself for that if you follow me on social media. If this ends tonight in a 4-0 sweep, I am going to post, boy, at least we had that awesome double play in game 1. And it was 0-0 at the time. And you had kind of a bullpen game going for the Brewers with Ashby, the opener. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then Quentin Priester got the ball, and he did bounce back. I wouldn't say he was as sharp as he was in the regular season at any point, but he was a whole hell of a lot better than he was. We might be swearing on this podcast. He was a whole hell of a lot better on Monday than he was in Game 3 at Wrigley Field last week, Wednesday. He gave you 4 shutout, but a part of that was that crazy double play in the 4th inning where the Dodgers had the bases loaded, 1 out, and hit a drive to center field that looked like it was going to be gone. Frelick in center field hits off of his mitt, then the top of the wall, didn't go over, hit the yellow line, but didn't go over, and then bounced back in his mitt. And there was confusion among Dodger players. Did he catch it? Did he not catch it? Did that count as a catch? It all happened so fast. So Frelick reels it in. That's not a catch. If it hits off the wall and then you get it back, that's not a catch. Although I think it should be. I think the more I thought about this on Monday night, I think if it hits off the wall first, obviously, and you catch it, that cannot be a catch. But if you initiate first contact, is that the most outrageous idea for a new rule? If the ball hits our guy first and then bounces off the wall and then they reel it in, why shouldn't that be an out? But there was confusion because of that, and then Frelick to Ortiz to Contreras. What a relay. They get the force out at home, and then more confusion on the base paths for the Dodgers. You get the force out at third. So you went from an inch away from it being 4-0 on a grand slam to an inning-ending double play, and still 0-0. And at that moment, and I think we talked about this on the HBL morning show the next morning on Tuesday, in that moment with how nuts that play is, and you're never going to see that play again. We blogged about it. I have watched thousands of baseball games in my life. I have called hundreds, maybe thousands of baseball games in my life, or 1,000 games in my life. I have never seen a play like that. I have never seen an 8-6-2 inning-ending double play, and I probably never will. Baseball's been around since the 1870s. We've never seen anything like that in 150 years. If you lived another 150 years, I don't think you'd ever see it again. That's what makes that sport so fun, is you never know. Most nights it's going to be routine, but you might show up at the ballpark or watch a game, and you see something that you have never seen before. In that moment, I am thinking, Bob Uecker, Angels in the outfield, something magical is happening to escape that in a 0-0 game. But they just could not get anything going against Blake Snell, who was locked in, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, signed a $185 million contract in LA before the year. And he's fresh, too. And that's maybe another component to this that we haven't talked a lot about, but that's an element as well. Blake Snell only made 10 starts in the regular season. He signed late in the year. Remember, he was a free agent up until, I think, early April. So then he needed ramp-up time. Then he got hurt. So he didn't even start starting games for the Dodgers until the end of July. So not only do you have this all-star roster of players and pitchers, the pitchers are fresh. He has only thrown 70 or 80 innings, and he is fully 100% healthy. Freddie Peralta had a fabulous year, but I don't think anyone would be shocked if he was a little out of gas. He got the start on Tuesday. We can talk more about that, but he's thrown almost 200 innings. So you've got these unbelievably talented pitchers, Cy Young Award-winning, multi-time Cy Young Award-winning pitchers, and they're fresh at the right time of year. Brewers just couldn't generate any kind of offense. So ultimately you get down on a Freddie Freeman home run in game one, of course, and it's to that stupid, okay, we're not going to say that one, that stupid short porch in right field where Pete Alonso hit that 3-run shot in game 3 last year. Move that damn wall back in. How important are the 20 fans that buy tickets out there, or are they maybe marketing partners and then the employees get to go down there? I don't even know how you get in that area. I've never been in that area, and I've been in most of the fan areas in American Family Field. Push that right field wall, get rid of that, and make that a normal wall. How many opposing players do we have to watch hit big October home runs that barely get over that part of the wall? The only place in the park where that would be a home run. How many times do we have to watch that before we get rid of that and push it back in? I guess I know the answer to that because we're talking about money and we're talking about Mark Atanasio. So it's going to stay forever. They actually move. They may make more. They may move the walls into 270 feet all the way around the park and create more seating out there. So that put the Dodgers up 1-0. And with the way Snell was going, it was hard to fathom a world where they were going to be able to get anything going off of him. He had it all working. He was working the corners. He was working the edges. He wasn't leaving anything middle. He was low on pitch count. Brewers couldn't run up his pitch count. He was on the corners and the base of the strike zone with his changeup. I mean, he was spotting everything, spotting dimes and eating onions. And you get to the 8th inning. It's still 1-0. They give up one more run, which would turn into be a big run. Abner Uribe, who has not had a good series, he gives up an insurance run. It would have been then in the top of the 9th inning, right, to make it 2-0. But then I was stunned that they did not leave Snell in for the complete game. I thought for sure Dave Roberts would put him back out. I think he was at 94 or 95 pitches. And with the way those innings were going, he probably would have wrapped that up at 103, 104. I don't think it would have taken him more than 10 pitches to dispose of the Brewer offense in the 9th inning. But fortunately for the Brewers, they go to the pen, and then the Brewers got it going. That is the Achilles heel of this Dodger team. We talked about it on Monday. You've got to get into the bullpen because that really is their only weakness. And you saw it on Monday. Unfortunately, we didn't see it last night, but on Monday, the second you had anybody on the mound that's not named Blake Snell, the Brewers got things going. You had the single, the walk to Collins, then you had the double by Bowers, who off the bat I thought he hit a game-tying 2-run bomb. Then Churio hit the sac fly to make it 2-1. Ultimately, you get bases loaded 2 down for Bryce Terang against Trinan, who has a 5+ ERA. And then that moment where it looked like it was going to hit Terang, and he scoots out of the way. And I know, I get it. I thought the same thing as everybody out there. Just let it hit you. Somewhere Fernando Vino weeps that you did not let that hit you. What a legend he was for the Brewers. Caleb Durbin gets hit by a ton of pitches. He almost broke Vina's record for most hit by pitches in a season. Unfortunately, Durbin wasn't at the plate in that instance. But it's instinct. It is instinct to move out of the way of a 90-mile-an-hour slider that's coming at your kneecap that if it hit me, if that pitch would have hit me, I know a lot of fans were saying I could have stood in there and took that hit, you'd be in the hospital. I would be. The game would be tied, but I would be in the hospital. So the natural fan reaction when you see him jut out of the way is, oh my God, get hit by a pitch. You were an inch away from tying the game. But he doesn't, and then the next pitch was an eye-level fastball, and he was way behind it. I do wonder, on that last pitch where he strikes out and the game's over, when he does get out of the way of the pitch before that, you can see him look to the dugout and kind of have an anguished look on his face where he knows he can't go back and redo it, but he knows if he just stands in there, he's hit by the pitch and the tying run scores. So you almost wonder if that made him over-aggressive or if that was lingering in his mind when he went up there for the next pitch. And you strike out on one right at the eyes, and that's the end of the game. But they were one hit away. If Terang gets a hit there, if he finds grass anywhere, Yelich is the guy at second base, he's going to score. And you're going to escape and steal that game. A game where you were absolutely dominated by Blake Snell. You had a chance with one hit to steal it and win it 3-2. And I wonder if anything's different. Maybe it's not. But now that you're down 3-0 and we see the way this whole thing is gone, you go back to that moment and think, boy, what would have happened? What's the butterfly effect there if Terang gets hit by the pitch and it's tied and you win on the next at bat. Or if he does get a single on the next pitch and you win 3-2, you get up 1-0 in the series. How does that impact things down the road? How do the dominoes fall after that? I would think we're maybe in the same spot where you're down 2-1, but then at least you have a chance. At least you're thinking, if we win tonight, we tie the series, we force it back to Milwaukee. Just interesting to go back, and interesting is probably the wrong word, but to go back, and pathological maybe, to go back and look at that moment and say you were one hit away from stealing a game that you had no business being in and you just couldn't get it done. And then the sequence after that, so you lose that 3-1 or 2-1. And my wife and I were there on Tuesday. Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the hill for the Dodgers. Year 2 in L.A., they paid $325 million before the 2024 year to bring in Yamamoto from Japan, where he had outstanding numbers. He's 27 years old. The Brewers actually got to him in one of those July starts. He didn't even make it out of the first inning. I think he only lasted 2/3 of an inning and gave up 5 or 6 runs. So that gave me some hope going into Tuesday. You get out there, Freddie's on the mound, he sets it down in the first inning, you put a 0 up, and then the first pitch of the game from Yamamoto to Chourio, he squares up, hits a home run to the opposite field, and the place is up for grabs. It is so loud. I thought there was no chance. Now, I make my money with a voice. That's all I have. If I lose that, I don't know. I have nothing. I have very little. There's no ancillary skills here, as you probably have gleaned by listening to this podcast. What's your backup plan, John? I don't have one. I have a plan A, and that's it. But you go to these games, it happened to me during the Bucks finals run, too, where you've got to be a little bit careful if you work in radio and you podcast, and now we're doing sportscasts all over the state, so I've got more responsibilities. When it was just the B93 morning show, when that was it, I guess I cared less, only because I know our listeners know I'm at those games, and they know I'm going crazy, so not having a voice the next morning kind of plays into that role. And it's genuine, but I think they don't mind as much because they know the circumstances. When I'm trying to do a professional 2 or 3 minute sportscast in Green Bay or Wausau or whatever, they're not as into it if you don't have a voice and you're screeching and clawing your way through it. So Chourio hits that home run. So I'm telling myself, a little pep-up speech or a pump-up speech before I sit down, be careful. You have more responsibilities now than you did the last time you were doing this, so just be careful with your voice. Pick and choose your spots here. And then I'm going nuts when Chourio hits that home run, and I'm thinking I'm going to lose my voice by the 3rd inning because I'm expecting in that moment that they are going to have an outstanding night. And that turns out to be it. The first pitch you hit out, and that is the last run they score that night. Yamamoto is then as good as Snell was. Maybe not quite as good, but a percentage or two less than what Snell was. Snell had no-hitter stuff on Monday. I don't know that Yamamoto had that on Tuesday, but Snell had no-hitter stuff on Monday. And again, I am shocked they pulled him from that game. They don't do it on Tuesday. They let Yamamoto go out there. He pitches 111 pitches in a complete game where he only gives up 1 run. And you end up losing that game 5-1. I thought Freddie was fine. They tried to get 1 more out of him, so he gave up 2 runs in the second. So right away, you're down 2-1. But you're only down a run. I mean, somebody runs into a home run, you have a bloop and a double, and it's a tie game. The one that was the backbreaker was, I think, the 6th inning. So Freddie had campaigned, apparently, to stay out for the 6th inning. They were going to pull him after 5. And he goes, I think, 2 up, 2 down to begin the 6th inning. And then he had a 3-2 count on Max freaking Muncy. I mean, you've got this lineup with Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and Will Smith, and Max bleeping Muncy is going to hit that kind of a home run. That's what's so infuriating about this Dodger team. Not just the fact that they have MVPs and All-Stars up and down the order. They also have really good role players like Kike Hernandez, who came up with a big hit, and Pages, who came up with a big hit on Tuesday. And Max Muncy hits a home run to dead center in a 3-2 count. I mean, are you kidding me? That was the backbreaker. It was just out of Frelick's reach in dead center field. And in that moment, you thought, boy, 2 runs just feels like a lot. And then they get the tack-on runs late. 5-1 loss for the Brewers on Tuesday. So you regroup Wednesday. They have the workout at Dodger Stadium. Then we get to last night. We knew that it was going to be Glasnow on the mound for the Dodgers. So it's another tough guy. Not quite to the level of Yamamoto, who is the highest-paid starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. Ohtani's the highest-paid player, and he is a starting pitcher, but just starting pitcher exclusive. Yamamoto's contract is the richest in baseball history. And like we said, Snell's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, and he signed for, I think, just short of $200 million. Glasnow is not at that level, but he is a former All-Star, so it is another really tough arm to deal with. He actually did make 2 starts against the Brewers in the regular season. Clearly 2 games the Brewers won because they went 6-0 against him in the regular season. But in the 2 games he started against the Brewers, he pitched a combined 11 innings and only gave up 1 run. And he had not given up a run in the playoffs up until that point. He had pitched 7 2/3 against the Phillies and did not give up a run. So you knew you were in for it again, but you got to find a way. You got to get back to grinding out at bats. That was the big conversation Wednesday heading into last night is you have to get back to being the Woodpeckers because not only did Snell and Yamamoto dominate you, you were unable to fight in counts. You were unable to run the pitch count out and get to the bullpen, which has been the goal for this Brewer offense. Get to that weaker Dodger bullpen. Well, they get to last night, and they actually ended up doing that, where they made Glasnow work a little bit. Aaron Ashby worked as an opener for the Brewers. Look, I get it. Pitching is not the problem right now. The pitching staff has given up 10 total runs in 3 games. I mean, think about that. The pitching staff has given up 10 runs in 3 games to a lineup that has Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman as their 1, 2, 3, and Will Smith batting cleanup, and other guys who have 20-plus home runs and 80 driven in. We were sitting there on Tuesday, and I think it was Kike Hernandez who was the other guy who had a home run? It was, I can't think of it, Escobar? It'll come to me. It's not going to come to me. But they have guys at the bottom of their lineup where their 8-hole hitter, when we were up there on Tuesday, their 8-hole hitter, Teoscar Hernandez, their 8-hole hitter has 27 home runs and like 85 driven in. That would be a middle-of-the-order bat for the Brewers and a lot of teams in Major League Baseball. So you've got all these MVPs. Oh, and then, by the way, at the bottom of the order, we have guys that are like 30 home run, 100 RBI guys. Oh, cool. And the 8 and 9 slots. So you go with Ashby as the opener, and I just don't know what we're doing with that. It feels like we've fallen in love. I get it. The pitching staff isn't healthy like it was in July and in August, and it feels like Freddie's your only guy now you feel comfortable with starting from the actual first inning because of the way Game 3 went for Priester. They're using an opener for him, and Woodruff is hurt. It just feels like let the starters start. We talked about that yesterday morning on the B Morning Show and the HBL Morning Show when we were talking about, what might they do? Because at that point, yesterday morning, we did not have anybody that we knew that was pitching. We only knew Glasnow was on the hill for the Dodgers. And then I think it was about 3 hours before game time, they announced that once again, Aaron Ashby is an opener. I don't get it. I know pitching isn't the problem, but I just don't get it. Just let your starters start. It would be one thing if Aaron Ashby was setting guys down 1, 2, 3 in these opening stints and just dominating and setting the tone for the night. He's not doing that. It has not worked with Aaron Ashby, who has pitched a ton, by the way. He had great numbers in the regular season, but it feels like his arm is going to fall off at this point. Remember, this is a guy that's still coming back from major arm surgery a year and a half ago, and now you're throwing him out there in these high-leverage situations, and it just isn't working, and I don't know why we've fallen in love with that. Again, pitching is not the problem, but I do not understand why Murphy's doing this. This feels like another example of, and I love Pat Murphy, it feels like another example of when we go back to the Cubs series when they switched the batting order in games 3 and 4 for no reason other than just to do it, and they gave a Lockridge a start. I mean, it didn't make any sense. And remember we said it felt like Murphy was out-managing Murphy? I feel like it's another example of this with the use of these openers. They used openers a little bit for Priester in the regular season, but it was not a go-to. And again, I get injuries have changed the dynamic, but you've got Mizarowski, you've got Quintana. Why is Quintana not starting for this team? He hasn't pitched since that Game 3 where he was in relief of Priester, and he had 3-plus scoreless innings there. You have options. Just start your starting pitchers. And it backfires. Now, I will say this about last night. So they lead off the game. Ashby's opening. Ohtani hits a triple. 2 pitches later, Betts hits a double. And before you can even blink, you're down 1-0. And it backfires. I will say this in defense of Ashby. That Shohei Ohtani triple is one of the most preposterous things I've ever seen in my life. He is a left-handed hitter. That pitch was a foot off the plate on the right corner. And he not only got a hit, he hit it to right field somehow. So really think about the swing dynamics there of a left-handed hitter, a pitch low and outside on the right side, and he dumps it into right field. I could see maybe flicking one into left field where, you just catch a piece of it off the end of the bat and you send it down the left field line. How in the name of Zeus's butthole do you, as a left-handed hitter, take a pitch low and outside on the right corner and dunk it into right field? It makes no sense. So I will say that in defense of Ashby, but that's the triple. Betts a ringing double or whatever. Yeah, ringing double. That scores the run. Immediately you're down 1-0, and you haven't scored runs, so this is not good. Any deficit is not good. Mizarowski came in, and he got him out of that with the last 2 outs, And he looked like a bad man walking off the mound at the end of that first inning. And it gave me some hope of, okay, you got out of it. You only gave up the one run. And Miz looks like he's locked in, and he was locked in. Maybe the biggest piece of silver lining of this entire championship series might be Jacob Mizorowski. Then you come out in the second inning, and they actually get the game tied. Caleb Durbin had a triple. He was the only guy who came to play last night. Jake Bowers with an RBI single up the middle. Boom, you're tied at 1. Now, later in that inning, you had Bowers at third base with 1 down. Infield hit, and they're playing on contact. I know this infuriates some Brewer fans that they do this contact play where the runner on third is going on contact, so it doesn't matter. Is it a ground ball? Is it a fly ball? Obviously, a fly ball you could get back, but they're running no matter what on third base. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it looks really bad and really stupid. And because of that, you end up with a lot of fans on social media saying, why are they doing this? It was an obvious out. Why are you running into an obvious out? I had no problem with it yesterday. In other instances, I have. I had no problem with it yesterday because they know, Murphy knows, the coaching staff knows, the players know, they can't score runs right now. So if you have a runner on third base, you have to take a chance. You have to take a chance at scoring that run. And Max Muncy, who's been a thorn in our side, made a great play. He made a great play at third base to field it. He made a great throw right in stride to home, and Bowers was meat at home plate. But you made them make a play. I'm fine with that, given that you have not been able to score runs. It's been like trying to draw blood from a stone. I have no problem going on contact there because you feel like, okay, if Muncy doesn't field this, if he throws wide of the plate, you probably score, and you're up 2-1. And then who knows how the rest of the game plays out. But I don't mind the aggressiveness there, given how many opportunities have you even had with a runner on third base in less than 2 outs. You've got to find a way there, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And as it would turn out, that would be the last real threat the Brewers had on the night. Miz dominated until the 6th inning, and I mean, he was mowing them down. As good as he's looked, probably the best he has looked this year, Miz appears to be a playoff riser. You hear those conversations a lot of who's bad in October yelling, and who sees their game elevate in October, a playoff riser. Durbin so far looks like a playoff riser. Mizorowski looks like a playoff riser to me. We've been over how rough he looked at the end of the regular season to the point where fans were wondering, should he even be on the NLDS roster? He goes out against the Cubs in Game 2, 3 scoreless in relief. He has that great outing in Game 5 in the do or die where he doesn't give up a run, I don't think, or did he give up 1 run? I don't think he gave up. Well, he must have given up 1 run on, it's hard to remember now. Yeah, he gave up the 1 run to Suzuki. But other than that, he was spectacular. And then yesterday, his stuff was so crisp. He was trusting his off speed. He was mixing pitches. He made them look foolish. I mean, he made MVPs like Freeman and Ohtani, made them look like they had no idea what was going on out there. But eventually, I think he was at 60-plus pitches. The Dodgers do get a rally going. They got a single and then a walk to Freeman, which should not have been a walk. If you were watching that game last night, he should have struck out. It was a pitch high on the corner, on the right corner against Freeman, right on the corner, perfectly placed, should have been a strike, called a ball. Next year, that'll be a strike. With the ABS review system, next year, that will be a strike. That leads to a walk, so 2 on with 1 down, and then Tommy Edman, of course, former Cardinal. Tommy Edman just dumps a bloop single on a slider below the zone. I mean, pretty much perfectly placed. Edman was guessing where it would be and what pitch it was, and he guessed right. And he loops one into center field. Frelick had a bad break on it. Frelick had a terrible throw. That scores the run to make it 2-1. Then they lift Mizorowski, which I kind of get at that point. I think he's in the middle 60s in terms of pitch count. They bring in Uribe. I don't know, is Abner Uribe the closer on this team anymore? I don't know. He's been used at middle relief now a couple of times, and it hasn't worked out great. He comes in, and for reasons I cannot explain, even 18 hours later, or whatever it is now, 12 hours later, he tries to check the runner back at first base. 2 down, runners at the corners. Abner Uribe has never picked off a guy in his career. In fact, if I'm to believe the Twitter reports, he has not even attempted to pick off a player at first base since 2023. Why in that moment, when you have the kind of arm Uribe does, you have strikeout stuff, and he had just struck out the guy before that. Why in that moment would you try to pick off a runner at first base? Just get the guy out at the plate. And he tries the pickoff, and it's a terrible throw. It goes to right field, and that allows another run to score. And like we just said, with the way the Brewer offense is going, 2-1 felt like it was going to be tough. Then you gift them a run with that pickoff attempt and the throwing error. Now you're down 3-1, and that feels like a mountain. It's sad to say, but that feels like a mountain right now with the way this Brewer offense is going to try to even get 2 runs to tie it. 7th inning had the leadoff double from Durbin, and then they couldn't even get him moved over. Not only did he not score, you couldn't even get him moved over to scoring position. And after that, you couldn't get anything done. Now, like we said, they did get into the bullpen. Glasnow was out after 5 2/3, so you're kind of feeling like, okay, at least we finally got to their bullpen, but the bullpen was up to the occasion, or maybe more so this Brewer offense is just tied in knots right now, and they couldn't get anything going even against the bullpen in what ends up being a 3-1 loss. And on top of that, Chourio left the game. They're saying cramps, so that was the 7th inning, I think. I think it was the 7th inning or the 6th inning, where he took that hard swing and he immediately grabbed at that right hamstring that's been bothering him. He couldn't even move his leg. Now, I do think if you want to believe the cramping story, I think we've all had that, right? A cramp in your foot, a cramp in your leg, where it feels like the most unimaginable pain for, I don't know, anywhere from a minute to 2 or 3 minutes, and you can't even move. You're afraid to move. That's kind of what it looked like. How about that Dodger crowd, by the way? I hate to do the hashtag classy thing. They were booing him. I mean, Jackson Chourio cannot straighten his leg out. He's hopping around on one foot, and they're booing him as if he's faking some kind of injury to buy himself some time. He hopped his way right into the trader's table, and they had to put Blake Perkins in the game. So I didn't understand the smattering of boos that Jackson Chourio was enduring just because he had some kind of spasm or cramp or hamstring issue. They said after the game that it was just cramping. Get him a Gatorade and a banana, and maybe he'll be fine, and he'll be out there tonight for Game 4. But I don't know. He's had so many issues now with that on and off. You almost wonder if he's just done for the postseason. We'll see when they announce the lineups for tonight. But nobody's got it going right now. It is a disaster. You have Chourio. He's hitting it hard, but he's 0 for 4. Bryce Terang is lost. I mean, what an August from him in first half of September. He got kind of cold at the end of September. He has been frigid in the playoffs. Contreras was great against the Cubs, has not had much of anything going against the Dodgers. Yelich is obviously a disaster. 1 for 4, did have the infield hit in his first at-bat yesterday. I kind of thought maybe he'll get going after that, but then just 3 terrible at-bats, all 3 strikeouts. Vaughn 0 for 3, Frelick. The 4th inning at-bat from Sal Frelick, where he just swung and missed at 3 pitches in the dirt. I don't know what that was. One of the worst at-bats of the year. 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. Durbin was good. 2 for 3, a double, a triple, and a walk. Jake Bauers had the hit with the RBI. Ortiz is Ortiz, 0 for 2. Eventually, Isaac Collins came in. He popped up on the first pitch, and they did bring in Monasterio. I do think you've got to start Monasterio tonight. I know Murphy's going to want to stick with his guys that got him here, even though you're on the brink now. Monasterio's bat is so much better than Ortiz's bat right now. And look, if you put Monasterio in tonight, maybe he goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts, and everybody's saying, oh, John, I thought Monasterio was going to be better. Just overall this year, his bat, what was he hitting? 285 this year, Monasterio? And Joey Ortiz cannot buy a hit right now. Monasterio hit 270 with 4 bombs and a 755 OPS. Not bad numbers. The argument is Joey Ortiz is so good defensively, you can't sacrifice that. But I think at this point, Monasterio's dip in defense is not nearly as bad as the dip in offense with Joey Ortiz. You know what I mean? I don't think Monasterio is that bad defensively that you don't want to have his bat in there. And you need as many bats, capable hitters as you can get right now. And I would not categorize Joey Ortiz as a capable hitter at the moment. Everybody's slumping at the right time. Brewers have scored 3 runs. They have 9 hits and 3 runs in 3 games. And this was a 97-win team and a team that scored the 3rd most runs in Major League Baseball. Just an awful, awful time for them to do what they're doing. Now, there is the question. We had this posed on the text line. You know, what's the breakdown? If you had to do a blame pie, let's do a blame cobbler. let's do a blame baked Alaska. If you had to break this down, what would you say the percentage is that Brewer players are just awful right now, and what percentage is this is an elite Dodger pitching staff and elite pitchers when they're dialed in, which the Dodger pitchers are, it's just going to make you look bad. So where do you break that down? I guess I'd say when you go back to the Phillies series in the NLDS, with the exception of one game in that series where the Phillies kind of got after Yamamoto, the Dodgers did it to the Phillies too. The starting pitchers for the Dodgers in the playoffs, so 4 games against Philly and now 3 games against the Brewers. The combined ERA is 1.41 from their starting pitchers. So they did it against the Phillies, and they're doing it against the Brewers. Now, we love the Brewers, And I think we all enjoyed the woodpecker mentality and battling in at-bats. I think they still have to try to get back to that to some extent tonight. But if you put the Phillies lineup next to the Brewer lineup, the everyday lineup, you'd be on crazy pills if you said the Phillies lineup was not better top to bottom. They're like the Dodgers. They've got Bryce Harper, who's a former MVP, Kyle Schwarber, who's in MVP conversations every year. They've got Trey Turner, who's an MVP and an all-star. They've got JT Realmuto. They've got Alex Bump. They've got a lot of guys. So the fact that the Dodgers basically did the same thing to Philadelphia that they're doing to the Brewers, I guess I would weigh the percentages on the scale of justice a little bit more to the side of the Dodgers pitching being just that good. But it is infuriating to watch this Brewer team all year play a certain way and then just be unable to conjure it up in the biggest moments of the year. But yeah, the Dodger pitching has been unbelievable. The two guys in games 1 and 2, and I know people are tired of the financial narrative, and it sounds like whining from a small market team. Fine, I'm going to whine a little bit. But when you look at games 1 and 2, Blake Snell and Yamamoto, they paid a combined $507 million for those two guys. So those are elite pitchers, and they are all dialed in. And it's one thing if you have to go against an elite pitcher and they're having an off day. And we saw that happen this year. We saw that happen twice with Paul Skeens facing the Brewers. He's going to win a Cy Young this year. He is an elite pitcher, but he didn't have it on those days. And the Brewers were able to get to him for 2, 3, 4 runs. And that's a big number against a guy like that. So it's one thing to go against elite pitching. It's a whole other thing to go against elite pitching when that pitching is dialed in, and that's exactly what the Dodgers are. So it's a perfect storm right now. You have frontline pitching that is locked in and healthy and has energy and hasn't pitched or hasn't made 30-plus starts this year. And you've got a Brewer offense that got off to a bad start and are pretty clearly in their own heads right now and can't find a way to get back. They're just lost in the weeds. Can't find a way to get back to what they did in the regular season to so much success, and that was not swinging at bad pitches, good pitch selection, when you get in a 2-strike count, fouling off pitches, at least making the starting pitcher work, get that pitch count up there, get to the bullpen. We have not seen a whole lot of that through 3 games so far, and it's hard to imagine that they're just going to discover it before Game 4. But I would say if you're weighting the baked Alaska here, I would say 65% is on the side of this Dodger pitching is a buzzsaw right now, and I would put 35% on the Brewers just having a tough approach. And then the fact that they're not hitting, it's just as contagious as if you are hitting. If you talk to any baseball player or manager or coach or whatever, hitting is contagious. If the guy before you does it and the guy before that guy does it, it's on down the line. Everybody feels better. The exact opposite is true, where when Blake Snell shuts you down for 8 innings on Monday and you're barely able to get going in the 9th inning, the same stuff happens in reverse where, oh, God, the guy in front of me struck out. Well, now I have to do something, and then you're clenching the bat even harder, and then you strike out. Oh, and then Yelich comes up, I got to do something, and then he hits a weak grounder to second base, and it just starts to stack on top of each other. And the fact that the Dodgers continue just to throw guys out there who are top-end pitchers the next day. You know, in the regular season, you might get a break where you get run over by a couple of good pitchers, but then you're facing the Reds' number 3 guy. You know what I mean? In the middle of July or in the middle of June, you're facing the 5th pitcher for the Pirates. And then you can kind of get the offense going again. There is no relenting here. The Dodger, that staff has big name after big name after big name, so you never can catch your breath. You can never get a break, and that continues tonight. So can the Brewers can they get the offense going, and can they do it against Shohei Ohtani? You know what I feel like Pat Murphy is right now? In Apollo 13, when everything's going to hell, and Ed Harris's character looks around the room, and he says, what do we have? I think I've got this worked out. What do we have on the spacecraft that's good?
What have we got on the spacecraft that's good?
Nothing.
I'll get back to you, Gene.
That's what we feel like.
What have we got on the spacecraft that's good?
That's trying to figure out the offense right now. Who do we have that's good? Caleb Durbin, maybe? That might be it. But can you find a way to get it going against Shohei tonight? So Shohei's going to be on the mound. He came back as a pitcher, I think, middle part of this year or toward the end of this year. And he was okay in around a 4 ERA, but he is a guy in his career. We know Shohei Ohtani is maybe the greatest player of all time. I mean, he's the greatest player, I think, in the last 20 or 25 years when you consider he hits 290, hits 50 to 60 home runs, knocks in 130 runs. And then there have been years where, as a pitcher, he has been a top 5 Cy Young guy. That is not what he was this year, but he has that capability, and he's a guy who throws 99, 100, 101 at times, and that's what the Brewers are up against tonight. Brewers are TBD. I was doing a couple morning shows this morning where we were speculating what we thought Pat Murphy would do. I said on a couple of the shows, I'm done trying to guess. I thought it would be Jose Quintana in Game 3, and they go with Ashby as the opener and Mizorowski getting the bulk, which ends up being fine. Again, pitching is not the problem. I would think Jose Quintana, the crafty lefty, the veteran who has playoff experience, who has success in the playoffs, who has pitched at Dodger Stadium to some success in his career, you would think he's the no-brainer. Like we said, he hasn't pitched since Game 3 against the Cubs, so I think he is fresh. And in a do-or-die game where your season is on the line, having a veteran lefty out there I don't think is a bad move. And the reason they've gone to Ashby as the opener is because Ohtani's a lefty and Freeman's a lefty, and you want those lefty-lefty matchups. Well, you have a lefty. He's a lefty. Jose Quintana is a veteran lefty. Why not just go with him and have your starter start the game? But I think anything is on the table. Now that you're down 3-0, it might be where you open the game with McGill and you just try to pass the baton and everybody gets an inning. It's all hands on deck. I could see Murphy going that direction too. But it would seem that the most logical conclusion here is that you are going to have Quintana on the mound tonight trying to save the season. A 7:38 first pitch for Game 4. Just get one. Let's just get one, not get swept, and then let's see what happens tomorrow. Now, could you imagine? Just think about it. Could you be the Red Sox of 2004? Now, remember in that series, you go back to 2004, the Red Sox were down 3-0. They got their doors blown off in Game 3. At home, they gave up 19 runs to the Yankees that night, and the vibes could not have been worse. I mean, I'm not a Red Sox fan, but I watch all the games, and you could sense it in the Fenway crowd that you came back home down 2-0, and then you got your doors blown off, and you're down 3-0, and at that point, nobody had ever come back from that deficit. And then you get to Game 4. Remember, in Game 4, that went 12 innings. So they were fighting for their season, and it went to extra innings. Ortiz gets the big home run. Then they had to go to 14 innings for Game 4, win that one to tie the series, and then they end up going back to New York, I think, and winning Game 6 and 7, or maybe, yeah, both of them. It had to be 2-3-2 format. So just keep that in mind when we think about that Red Sox team. They got killed in Game 3, and it took everything. They had to put it together like MacGyver for Game 4 with a lot of different pitching, a lot of different matchups, and they had to eke one out in 12 innings and get a big hit from David Ortiz to get that done. Can you duplicate that? I guess we'll see what starts tonight. Now, we can talk about maybe at a later date. I know we kind of brought it up throughout that conversation, but you do have the big the macro conversation here of a payroll for the Dodgers that's hovering around $400 million this year, and a payroll for the Brewers that's hovering around $120 million. And like I said when we brought it up earlier, I know casual baseball fans or many baseball fans, they don't want to hear from Brewers fans complaining about the payrolls. Like, I know that comes off as whiny. It comes off as excuse making. But as we've talked about on this podcast before, I don't think it doesn't have merit. I think sometimes there are excuses and there are explanations. Now, are the Brewers playing up to their capability in this series? No. Do I think a 97-win Brewer team, the best team in baseball in the regular season, should be performing better and this should be a series? Absolutely. More than anything, the fact that they're down 3-0 is on the way the Brewers are playing more so than it's on the payroll. But it is hard to ignore when I'm at the game on Tuesday and you see on the scoreboard the two rosters, the two lineups next to each other, and the Dodgers have 3 MVPs to begin their lineup, and then an all-star catcher hitting cleanup. And like we said, they've got guys in the 8 and 9 hole with 25 bombs and 90 driven in. And you look at the Brewers side of things, and you've got Blake Perkins in there and Joey Ortiz. And then you look at the starting rotations, and the Dodgers have the highest-paid starting pitcher in baseball in Yamamoto, 2-time Cy Young Award winner in Snell, an all-star in Glasnow. You know, it is hard to ignore, even though it comes off as whiny from our fan base. If that's the narrative approach we're going to take here, it is hard to totally ignore it, though. It is a thing. It is having an impact. More so the Brewers' bad play, but it is having an impact. I have heard discussions that people think that this series is going to lead to a bigger conversation once we get to the next labor dispute, which is coming in 2027. So not this next year, but the year after that. And it feels like the owners or somebody, there are going to be people out there that want to have some kind of salary cap, whether it's a hard cap or a soft cap or whatever. It's never happened in baseball. The players are certainly going to rage against it because they're making more money than anybody in any other professional sport, and all of the money is guaranteed. They've got the best deal going. And when you institute a cap, you are also capping the max amount of money those players can make. So the players are never going to want a salary cap, and there could be a real dispute in 2027 that could lead to a strike, the first one since 1994. But people are looking to this series as, if the Dodgers wipe out the Brewers, which it looks like they're going to, that becomes a bigger argument in 2027. If the Brewers would have won this series, and maybe they still will, then in 2027, all of the big market teams that spend $450 million on a team, they could say, well, look, the Brewers did it. The Brewers made the World Series with a $120 million payroll. They can do it. The small market teams can do it. They're not at a competitive disadvantage. Look at what the Brewers did. Look at what the Royals did in 2015. So there are some that are using this series in and of itself as kind of a microcosm argument of should there be a cap or shouldn't there be a cap based on the way this series has gone. And so far, you would say it's an argument for a cap and making things a little more competitively balanced. Well, we have Game 4 on the way tonight, a 7:38 first pitch as the Brewers try to stay alive. Now, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers, shall we? They are in Arizona this weekend. Not a whole lot to go over here, really. The biggest question from a Cardinal perspective is, who are they going to elect as Pope? From the Cardinal perspective is it Kyler Murray starting? Is it Jacoby Brissett starting? We talked about this on Monday. Kyler Murray was out last Sunday. Brissett is kind of the modern day, what do we compare him to? Ryan Fitzpatrick, where if he gets 2 or 3 games a year, that's great, and he looks good. If you sign him then to a starter's deal, a starting quarterback deal, and he makes 15 or 16 starts, that's not as good. But Brissett, in relief of Murray, threw for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns, looked great against Indy, even though they lost that game. But there's no official word as of yet as to who's going to start. I do have Kyler Murray on a fantasy team, and they do have him with a points expectation this week, so take that as you will. Generally, if a guy's not going to play, they'll have a 0 next to it to expected points, but he's expected to score 22 points. We'll see. That's a big question for the Cardinals. Cardinals are fighting for their lives right now. They started the year 2-0. They've lost 4 games in a row, and I feel like they probably feel like you can't fall to 2-5 with another home loss. Meanwhile, the Packers come in 3-1-1. Kind of an underwhelming win against the Bengals, although last night, how about that game? That Bengals-Steelers game turned into a thriller. 2 40-year-old quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco, dueling. And the Bengals end up winning 33-31. Rodgers got the Steelers down the field. Stop me if you've heard this before. Rodgers got his team down the field late fourth quarter and scored a touchdown. And then his defense couldn't get a stop, and the other team scored a field goal. And then Steelers still had the ball, and we got to see an Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary. And that dude can still chuck it. He threw it almost 70 yards in the air on a Hail Mary at the end that didn't end up working out. He didn't have Richard Rodgers down there. He had DK Metcalf, not Richard Rodgers. And they don't get it done, but what an entertaining game. And like we saw in the second half on Sunday at Lambeau Field, Flacco with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and some of the young weapons he has there, he got more comfortable with them by the second half against the Packers, and he was really comfortable all night last night. He had a 3-touchdown, no-pick, 300-yard night. And the Bengals end up winning 33-31. So looking at that, maybe now we look back to the matchup at Lambeau and say, well, maybe the defense didn't play that badly, given what the Bengals did to a pretty good Steelers defense last night and a good front seven last night. But it was a 27-18 win for the Packers at Lambeau in Week 6. They are 3-1-1, one of only 2 teams with only 1 loss right now, although I don't know that we're feeling like right now as Packer fans this is a potential 1 seed. I think they can maybe get there still, but at this present moment on October 17th, I don't know that I'm feeling that way. We'll see how they perform on the road this weekend. It does sound like Zach Tom was back at practice yesterday. I don't quite understand what they're doing with Zach Tom. Zach Tom is your right tackle. You just gave him a massive contract before the year began. You paid him more than any tackle has ever been paid in NFL history. And this is your guy now for the next 5 years. He is an anchor on that offensive line. And he tore or partially tore an oblique muscle before the year began. He sat out week 1. He sat out week 1 and 2. And then he came into that Cleveland game. Remember, he played 1 play and couldn't handle the pain that he was in. 1 play and out. Then he sat out the Dallas game. Then you had the bye week. Then he did play the full game against Cincinnati. But during the week, Zach Tom told Packer beat reporters that he, quote, blacked out for the second half of the game. He was in so much pain that he doesn't even remember the second half. So here's my question. Now, I know Anthony Belton's injury plays a role in this, and the fact that maybe the Packers don't love their third-string option at right tackle, and Anthony Belton has been out, so you didn't have him as a guy to go to. And now it sounds like he's going to be back, so maybe that gives you a chance to rest, Tom, if you wanted to. Belton was back at practice, and maybe he would be available by Sunday. But I guess you give this guy all this money. He's young. He signs the richest contract for a tackle in NFL history, or at least signing bonus-wise. Why are we forcing him out there with a torn oblique when now twice, once he played one play and couldn't continue, and then he didn't remember the entire second half because he was in so much pain? Why are we doing this? Why not IR him, have him sit out for 4 weeks? It's the middle of the year, still kind of the beginning of the year. Have him sit out for 4 weeks and at least get reasonably healthy. Now, maybe this is one of those injuries where the Packer training staff is saying you're not going to make it any worse, so this is just whether or not you can deal with the pain, which it is obviously a lot of pain. It just feels like this isn't just an everyday lineman here that's trying to make a career. This is a guy you're counting on for the next 3, 4, 5 years to be your starting right tackle, to be a Pro Bowl, all-pro level tackle. So you keep forcing him out there with this injury. I don't quite understand it, but he did practice on Thursday. Sounds like he's going to try to give it a go on Sunday. Lucas Van Ness did not practice. Apparently, he hurt his foot on the sack he got last Sunday. I don't think he's going to play. Devontae Wyatt sounds 50-50. You'd love to give him back for run defense. And Brandon McManus did not kick on either Wednesday or Thursday. He is very much in doubt for the weekend. We all feel good about what Lucas Havrisik did, 5 for 5 on Sunday against the Bengals. He might be your starting kicker again on Sunday. The Packers are 6.5-point favorites heading into the weekend. I do want to play you this. I think we teased this off the top. I thought a really interesting conversation with Micah Parsons outside of his locker after practice yesterday. Now, there has been a lot of talk on Packer Twitter. Parsons has 2.5 sacks, and we're through what now? We are through 5 games. So, when you bring in a guy like that, of that caliber, and you pay him the money you pay him, you're hoping to see those sack totals go up. But let's go back to a conversation we had after week 1. I think it was after week 1. Remember, I said, me personally, you can feel any way you want to, but me personally, just watching that game and the impact that he had on the field when he was on the field, my feeling was with the amount of pressure he generates, with the amount of double teams he generates, I remember saying, if he does that, if he just generates pressure and draws double teams and frees other guys up, I don't care if he has 6 sacks at the end of the year. He's been a double-digit sack guy his entire career. You'd love for him to pile up 12, 13, 14 sacks, Reggie White totals. You'd love for that to be the way this first year goes in Green Bay. But I think my contention was after week 1, if he's just doing that, if he's putting pressure on guys, if he's collapsing the pocket, if he's drawing double teams and freeing other guys up for sacks, even if his sack total isn't going up, I feel good about what he's been able to do. But now you're through 5 weeks, and some Packer fans are saying, well, you paid all this money and you made this big move and gave up these draft picks, and Micah Parsons has 2.5 sacks. Well, one of the reasons Micah Parsons has 2.5 sacks, as we are learning, is that this guy gets held on every goddamn play. And I mean every play. If you just watch number 1 on the field, every play he's on the field, he is held on every play. And some of them are more subtle, and some of them are super aggressive, and he never draws a penalty, and I don't understand it. I get that you can't throw a flag on every single play, but you got to throw a couple of them, because there are times when he's getting horse-collared down on the field, and they're not throwing anything, and until they do that, obviously, offensive linemen, tackles are just going to keep doing it until somebody throws a flag consistently on it. And they asked Parsons about that, and he had a very interesting response here.
We put so much emphasis on protecting the offense, protect the defense. A guy could be trying to catch the ball, and you make a defensive play so he doesn't catch it, and it's targeting. It's a flag now. But a defensive end can be rushing and engaged with another player, and the guy could come blow his ribs out. And we're not considered defenseless, but like we said, it's an offensive league. I think a lot of the rules are bullshit, and it's like a guy damn near hurt Van Ness last week. What are we doing? If you're gonna say it's about protecting the players, then protect all players. Don't just protect one side of the ball. I don't mind guys chipping from the outside, but running backs want to come and sneak players while we're engaged with offensive linemen, that's complete bullshit. And people want to encourage, that's not good football. That's not safe football if that's what they want to preach, on the offensive side. So I think those things are more frustrating than kids the whole who are we kidding? You want to find guys for putting their head down, but you can be engaged with an offensive tackle and the guard can come put his head right into your head. What are we talking about here? And look how many times that's on film. Guys putting their head down and trying to come clean your clock. But you can't do that to offensive players. Shit. Get a $50,000 fine. I might get a fine for this contract.
I thought that was really well thought out in the moment, and he's a fun guy to listen to. I think we talked about that when it related to Malik Willis and somebody else recently, too, where it's just fun to listen to him. It's fun to listen to him talk about the game. He's laid back, very conversational, and very thoughtful about what he's saying. And he's right. I mean, it's not new news. We know that. We know it's an offense league. The high point totals are what draw eyes. The high point totals and the big offensive plays are what get casual fans more invested. So it's always going to be weighted toward the offense. But his argument at this point is it's weighted so much. It's unfair. You have to bring it back a little more to center. And I think he's right. And again, if you are not somebody that's done this yet, I think a lot of the podcast listeners here probably have. But just watch him on Sunday. Just watch. Anytime number one is on the field, watch what happens to him during the course of a play. It's egregious, and it's never called. So the Packers are 6.5-point favorites heading into the weekend. This is another one of those like last week where it's not going to be easy on the road, especially if Kyler Murray is playing. And like we said, you've got a team that's lost 4 in a row and probably feeling like their season could be on the line. This is one you just want to get done. I'm not taking them to cover or anything like that. That's a pretty big nut to crack on the road. Just win this by any means necessary. Get to 4-1-1 and get back to Green Bay with a victory Monday. 3:25 kickoff on Sunday afternoon. I guess we could talk really quickly about the Badgers. You know what I want to do here for the Badgers? Let's do this. Instead of talking about what this weekend's matchup is going to entail against number 1 Ohio State, let's take you back to 2010, which feels like it's about a century ago. And the night the 18th ranked Wisconsin Badgers beat number 1 Ohio State, it started with the David Gilreath return. Here's a little Matt LePay on the call.
Charge 10, slicing left 15, across the 20, 25-30. Gilreath to the 40, he's to the 50. Foot race to the house, at the 30, at the 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Wisconsin. Yes. And this game is underway with a bang.
God. That feels so long ago. LePay is so good. So you've got number 1 Ohio State. Badgers have lost 4 in a row. They got smooshed by Iowa 37-0. And that is, like we said, a middle-of-the-road Iowa team, an unranked Iowa team. So what do you think number 1 Ohio State is going to do against this team? It's hard to imagine in a world where the Badgers lose 4 in a row and look absolutely lifeless on homecoming in prime time, losing 37-0 to Iowa. It is hard to envision a scenario where the Badgers even keep this remotely competitive on Saturday. They are 26-point underdogs, which we're going to talk about when we get to picks here in a second, because I think that's insanely low. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I can't believe I'm talking about a Badger home game in the middle of October where they are 26-point underdogs. And I think, 26? This should be 30, 35, 40 maybe. Like we said on the Monday podcast, Ohio State's probably not going to have to, but if Ohio State went out there with all of their starters, balls to the wall for the entire game, there isn't a doubt in my mind they win this game 70-0, maybe 70+0. But they'll probably throttle down at some point. At some point, they'll probably take their star players out because why risk injury? And you probably end up in a 45-0, 52-7 kind of game. I just don't see, how is this Badger team going to score? I mean, maybe we're reverse jinxing it here. That would be nice. I don't know who's starting at quarterback. It doesn't sound like Billy Edwards Jr. is, so you're going against the number 1 team in the country with either Hunter Simmons or Danny O'Neal. I mean, in what world, with that offensive line against a defense with 4 and 5 stars across the board, in what world is that team going to score a touchdown on something that's not fluky? Like, how are they going to go on a 10-play, 80-yard drive and score a touchdown? I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see it. So we'll talk more about that for picks coming up, but that is a 2:30 kickoff at Camp Randall on Saturday. Little Bucks tidbit here. They wrapped up the preseason 3-1. The regular season openers on Wednesday. How about Johnny Davis, by the way? They signed Johnny Davis to a G League contract. Former Badger standout. He was a top 10 pick to Washington. It just never worked out there, and it kind of feels like not only was he overwhelmed in the NBA, they tried to change his approach to his jump shot, and it looked awful, and it seems like he kind of got lost. And he signs a G League contract to join the Oshkosh Herd as a part of a 2-way deal with the Bucks. So Johnny Davis back in the state. But they give a contract extension yesterday to A.J. Green. This is a fantastic and club-friendly extension. And you feel good for A.J. Green, too. What a story. An undrafted guy from northern Iowa slowly develops his game. We knew he was a sharpshooter. We always knew that. Even when they signed him, we knew that. In college, he was so good beyond the arc. But does that work in the NBA? A. And B, can you be good enough defensively to justify being out there as a sharpshooter only, like Kyle Korver? We saw that late in his career. Are you so good shooting that you can live with how bad this guy might be defensively? So you've got to give them something. Well, A.J. Green has not only turned into a very consistent three-point shooter, 42% from beyond the arc over his 3 years in Milwaukee. He has also turned into a pretty decent on-ball defender for this team, too. So his game has developed to a point where he becomes not a cornerstone player, but a guy you want around. He signs a 4-year, $45 million deal yesterday. Like I said, for what he gives you offensively, for being a serviceable defender, for a guy who I think played 23 minutes a night last year, a career high, he'll probably be in that 23, 25, 27 range this year. They have been starting him in the preseason, which I also like. I like the starting lineup of Kevin Porter, Gary Trent, A.J. Green, Miles Turner, and Giannis. And now he's here for the foreseeable future, and you feel good for him where he gets this generational money, lifetime wealth, 4 years, $45 million. And he was already making a couple million a year before that, which for a lot of us would be lifetime worth of wealth. But he signs his first big contract, undrafted from Northern Iowa, and he's a big part of their plans going forward. I think that was a really good deal to get him on. And now we get set for the regular season. I am becoming very bullish on this Bucks team. They're young. They went from the oldest team in the league to the youngest team in the league. We saw some signs last year from the young guys. Now they've had a full offseason. You ink A.J. Green. You bring in some veterans around. Obviously, Miles Turner's the big addition. It feels like his game and Giannis's game work well together. And like we said, the over-under is 43.5 for total wins. We are heavy on the over, so we need a 44-38 season to cash the over. And unless there's a major injury, it feels like they're going to be right in that range. All right, let's make some picks.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Never tell me the odds.
If someone gives you 10,000 to 1 on anything, you take it.
See, that's a cool G, Daddy-O. Now you gotta let it ride.
Okay, we went 2-2 last week, so we are 10-9 against the spread so far this year. I don't have a ton. I'm not going to give myself this one for the official record. Credit to me for being a gentleman. But if you go back and look at my text chain with my buddies, I loved the Bengals at plus 6.5 last night. Just because, short week, I felt like Flacco was finding a rhythm with those two young receivers in the second half in Green Bay on Sunday. The Steelers are on a short week. They're on the road. Bengals probably need it more. Steelers were 4-1. Bengals were 2-4 going into last night. It just felt like that Steelers secondary isn't great. Their front seven is really good. So I had the Bengals plus 6.5, but I will not give myself credit for that on the official record because we did not have it as a pick before the game. So I have only 3. I am taking Ohio State minus 26. I've got the loser bet on the Badgers over on 5.5 total wins. There is no chance that hits. So now my only option is to try to make some of that money back by betting against the Badgers. And I don't see any way they keep it within that number. And that's crazy to say, but Ohio State is the number 1 team, 4-star, 5-stars, up and down the board. The only way the Badgers could maybe keep it in that number is if the Buckeyes just get super bored and they're not really invested in the game and they know they can just turn it on whenever they have to. That's the only realm that I can see where the Badgers keep it in the number, but I just don't think they can score. And I know Ohio State's going to score at least 30. So I am taking Ohio State minus 26. I am going over Commanders-Cowboys over 54. That is a big number, but those two defenses are not great. And Dak's been phenomenal. Jaden Daniels has been really good in his sophomore year. The team hasn't been as good, but he's been good. I just see points in this game. I see a 30-27, 35-31 kind of game. And then I'm going to take the Chargers. I had told you the Colts are my Vikings this year. They are the hill that I'm going to die on. I'm going to bet against them and bet against them and bet against them to my own detriment. I am taking the Chargers at home, minus 1.5. Chargers have injuries, but I think this is where the Colts train derails a bit. They've been playing some bad teams. They've been riding the good vibes. They're 5-1. And I know LA isn't necessarily a home field advantage for the Chargers, and there will be a lot of Colts fans there. That's what's happening in that stadium right now for Chargers games. But I will take the Chargers, basically going to pick them minus 1.5 at home against the Colts. Cowboys, Commanders over 54. Ohio State minus 26. Chargers -1.5 against the Colts, and I will not give myself credit even though I got it right on the Bengals. That'll do it for us here on your Friday morning. Now, what a world it would be if I click record on this podcast for episode 310 on Monday and the Brewers are still alive. Is that a world we could live in? What percentage chance is that? We'll either talk about Game 6 or we will recap a very frustrating series against the Dodgers. At least get one tonight. We'll hopefully have a victory Monday in terms of the Packers. We'll talk about whatever happens at Camp Randall on Saturday. We'll get after it, and the Bucs get underway on Wednesday next week, talking more about that too. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you then.